Good afternoon. Again to COVID and the law. This afternoon we bring you part 2 of land security in COVID. Last week we had Mrs. Veronica Frimpong, former legal officer, Lands Commission and head of legal SIC Life Savings and Loans, take us through what we need to know and what we must do to secure our lands. Today, we bring you part 2. Continue with very essential tips that will help you protect the piece of land or piece of earth that you have managed to procure. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is COVID and the law. This is your legal light and health law in these trying times. And we are privileged once again to have Mrs. Veronica Frimpong, former legal officer, Lands Commission, and head of legal SIC Life Savings and Loans, to return to the studio today to help us to continue with the discussion we started last week on COVID and land security. So we are doing COVID and land security part 2. Of course, it dawned on us at the end of the program last week that this will be necessary, but more importantly, we had just too many of you sending us messages and asking that you wanted us to finish up a lot more properly than the manner in which we ended. Now, let me say, when it's time for you to join, please be alert. Immediately we ask you to come on, you unmute yourself. It's that simple. You unmute yourself so that we can hear you. Again, don't listen to us on your TV if you are going to interact with us. Listen directly via your Zoom, and the Zoom ID and password will be supplied right on your screens. For those of you who have been asking for it ahead of time, I'm sorry, this is the time we can give it to you. Right, so Mrs. Frimpong, thank you very much for making the time once again to join us. Very good. And I am very excited because we got a lot of messages from our viewers and they are very excited. But I told some of them, you know, we like free things, you know, because it's free. This is free legal advice or service to you. Now, just a couple of reminders. Last week, we got to know that there is nothing like free land. There's nothing like land that is not owned by anybody in this country. And therefore, if you have to have a land, you must have been given it by somebody through a certain process. Among other things, you ask us to be watchful that once you enter onto a particular land given to you by whoever, you must do what you said, get a surveyor or get a lawyer to assist you. Now, if you get a surveyor, you use the words, they will pick the land. And then through that process, they will be able to show you that this is exactly what is on the paper that has been executed or signed. That is a land that has been given to you or you have purchased or whatever. And then you said you also need to conduct a search at the Lands Commission. And that search will assist you to know that the person who is giving it to you or who is selling it to you is actually the owner of the land, among other things. You also informed us that if you are purchasing or doing land transaction with a stool or a chief, you must know that the chief does not actually have land to give, but the chief works together with the principal elders of the stool or skin, or sometimes it's a family. And therefore, he will need the consent and concurrence of the principal elders of the family to make the document you are holding valid, without which you are in trouble. Are there one or two things that you remember you cautioned us about that I may not have said? Then we quickly proceed to the next steps.
Pretty much you've mentioned everything.
All right. Okay. Now, today, let's ask ourselves, how does one become owner of land? How can I become an owner of land?
Something, you can become owner of land if you buy the land. You may buy it outright from a family or a stool. If it's a stool, sorry, you can't buy outright. So you may buy from a family or from an individual. You may also inherit the land. So assuming your father owned a parcel of land, or your mother or any relative or anybody who chooses to will a parcel of land to you, you become owner of the land by virtue of the will, or if the person dies intestate and is shared, whatever portion is given you, you become owner through inheritance.
All right. Okay.
Then someone may also have a lease and may decide to give you some years out of the lease. You become an owner through that process as well.
All right. So you have given us three main ways by which we can become owners of land. Not just by simply going and say, I've seen this piece of land and there's nobody there, I jump onto it. Like they say in that song, Mifriso. So you just pick it and you say it's mine. But you can either purchase the land. You said you can get it either by a lease or sublease. You can also get it through inheritance. You can get it by a gift.
You may get it by a gift.
You may get it by a gift. Okay. So if I'm purchasing, if I'm getting it, purchasing outright, as you say, there are things I must watch out for. There are some that I cannot purchase outright, and I can get it by a lease, I can get it by inheritance. Go over that again for us in a way that allows us to watch, to pay attention to what we must be alert to, so that we don't get defrauded in the process.
So if you are buying outright, it should be from a family or from an individual who has previously bought outright.
Okay.
If you are buying from a stool and they promise to sell the land to you outright, that will be unconstitutional, because the Constitution does not allow that you sell stool land outright. So that's for the outright.
What does it mean if I don't have it outright? What does it mean?
Outright means the person has given the land to you forever. So he doesn't hold anything in the land again. The family gives it to you forever. So forever you are owner of the land. You won't go and pay any rent to them, nothing. It is yours. Okay. It's no longer theirs.
I thought that we all had the impression and thinking that when you buy land or when you do a land transaction, through whatever form, it is yours forever, because it is always said for 99 years. And if you are not a Ghanaian but a foreigner, then you get it for 50 years.
Yes. Usually, now we are seeing the leases more, probably because we are seeing more of the stool land. And for some of the families too, they've decided not to sell outright, but rather to give leases. Right. So that's why we are seeing the leases more. So yes, most people will say, I've bought land, but what have you bought?
Correct.
You may have bought 50 years, you may have bought 99 years, you may even buy 30 years or 20 years. If you even buy 10 years or 5 years, you have bought it for that period of time. And for that period, the land is yours.
After the 50 years, normally the question people ask, we know often the lease will be for 99 years. After the 99 years, what? They take it back?
Something after 99 years, usually in the land document, most people will not read the document, but you realize that there's a covenant that after the expiration of the term, so if the term is 40 years or 50 years, after that the expiration of that term, you quietly yield the land to the lessor, usually in leases. So the owner, the person who sold to
lessor, you. That's the one who gave it to you.
Gave it to you.
Okay, and you, the one who took it, is the lessee. Right.
You quietly hand the land over to the person. In some instances, you realize that there is a renewal clause.
Okay.
That when the term expires, we may renew for a further period. Sometimes they just say further period. At other times, they say for maybe extra 25 years or 10 years. So that's what. But if it simply says at the expiration of the term, you yield possession, then when the term expires, it's no longer yours.
All right.
So usually before the term expires, you try to contact the one who sold to you. If the person is dead, definitely if it's a family, there's a new family head.
That's right.
If it's a stool, there's a new chief for renewal. But you don't buy the land forever, usually.
Okay. So the typical definition of land, as you suggested to us last week, includes the things that are on it. So if you say at the expiration of the term, if there are no provisions for renewal or extension, whatever you call it, I'm supposed to yield it back quietly, and I got bare land, I put a building on it, what's the form in which I'm supposed to yield it back?
The very form in which it is at the end of the period. But if you have deteriorated it, sometimes there are even covenants in the lease that you restore it to a manner in which the lessor can have good use for. So if you've even deteriorated it, that's why they usually ask you to take insurance for the land. Okay. You would have to restore it.
Many people don't think about insurance for land.
Yes, many people don't. But if you look at most of the leases, we don't read. In your lease, you will typically see covenants. So wherever you see, someone gives you a document, you buy land, and you see the lessee covenant as follows. Please, buyer, you are the one they are speaking to. They are saying that you are promising to do whatever they have stated there. In the covenant. If you refuse to do that, there are consequences.
And like you were about to say, in the covenants will often include a covenant to insure.
Yes.
But we don't pay attention.
We don't pay attention. We just take them for granted.
I suppose for those who are in the extractive sector, mining and things, they can understand this a lot more because they go onto the concession and they do all sorts of things on it, and they know that they have a duty to ensure that it is replaced, or they leave the piece of earth or land in a manner that can be habitable or can be used subsequently. All right, so we have talked about purchase and lease, and the last time you also spoke to us about subleasing. What's the difference?
So something, usually when you are getting a lease, you are getting a lease from somebody who has a higher title. If I own the land forever and I'm giving you some years out of my interest, I'm creating a lease for you. So it could be the stool, it could be the family, or it could be an individual who has purchased the land outright or forever. Then you would have a lease.
All right.
If I have a lease and I'm giving you part of the years that I have, I am creating a sub-lease. Some people will say underlease. Underlease, sublease are all lease terms created out of the lease.
All right. Now let's talk about the inheritance. So you say we can get it by purchase, we can get it by a lease, sublease. We can also get it by inheritance. We have mentioned earlier by a gift. If it's being given to me as a gift, what should I pay attention to?
Something, if it's being given to you as a gift, then there should be a deed of gift. The difference between land or immovable property and other properties that you can move is that you can, when someone gifts the land to you, you can't carry it away. So the land would still be there. There could even be instances where it's a parent and some of your siblings are already living in the house, but they have gifted it to you. You can't carry the land or the property away. So the transfer is done by a document. So the one giving it to you should give you a deed of gift or a document evidencing the gift.
Right.
That's what should happen.
So again, you remember that last week, Mrs. Veronica Frimpong stressed the point that land transactions must be evidenced by documentation. So we give the example of Mama, who Honorable simply said, bring amount of money. She gave the money, and Honorable showed her that this is your piece of land. And she started farming and building upon it. And now she's in trouble because somebody else has come and is insisting that that's his land. And that person may have documents showing clearly that it has been given to him. So she says, if you are taking it by way of a gift, somebody is saying, look, this is mine. I don't want to use it anymore, or for one reason or the other, you're a good friend or something, I give you this, my land. Let it not be by word of mouth. It should be by a certain document, and she's named it deed of gift. And it will state clearly where that person is getting that land from before that person is giving it to you. Like she said last week, nemo dat quod non habet. That is the principle in land law. You can't give what you don't have. Before you give, you had, and you own before you gave. Inheritance.
Inheritance.
Yeah.
Something. That's where we usually have issues. So somebody inherits
I
land.
thought that you didn't bring any issues at all.
No, it does, because he inherits land, and so he sees himself as owner of the land, and that is it. But somebody should give you a document. The question is, the one I inherited from is dead, so how do I get documents over the land? Okay. So when somebody dies, there's a person who legally takes over that person's properties and help in distributing them.
We normally say estate.
Estate. So that person would be an executor if the one who died, the deceased person, died testate. That's if he died having made a will. Okay. Then if there was no will, somebody who is a beneficiary of the estate may apply to court to be granted letters of administration. Right. Please, without letters of administration, you cannot deal with a dead person's property. So whoever has the letters of administration, or the executor who would have a probate, would now transfer. So that person will sign the document, sign the land over to you. All right. And they do that by a certain document that we call vesting assent.
So she's brought us to one other point by way of inheritance. And many people get their land through inheritance. Your parents, somehow. So she says, if the person died without making a will, we say in law that the person died intestate. Therefore, you need to go to court. It's not a long process. It can take just 2 weeks to get that done. It can actually take a week to get it done. They file some papers for you, the people who are going to benefit from that person's property. And then the court will issue you what is known as the LA, or letters of administration. It is that power from the court that will be used to distribute the property among those who are supposed to benefit from it. Now, once that distribution is done, she mentioned a document. There will be a vesting assent. So another document is done, which now gives you that property, and your name will be put on it as one that the property is vested in. Then you can now begin to own it and do anything you want to do with it. And she says if the person didn't die intestate, then they died testate, meaning they would have made a will. And in the will, they would have said they are giving this land to Kwejo, this land to Hajia, or Amina. Then you still have to go to court with the probate. There are people who the person will have appointed to oversee the process. She called them the executors. Now they go and then they get the probate, and then through that also you do the vesting assent, and then you become the owner of the property. Great. Now we know that after we have become owners of the land, and in COVID we face threats. Even out of COVID we face threats, and we spoke about quite a bit of it last week. The threat we face to the land is what we want to look at again, like we started last week. What are some of the forms of threat that we find when we are dealing with land?
The first, or the basic one, is encroachers.
Encroachers.
So you have your piece of land, you go onto the land and you realize that somebody else is on the land, trying to develop the land.
Right.
Or once it's without your permission, the person is an encroacher.
Right.
So that's the commonest form of threat that we find to
that's the one of the situations we had last week, where he got it and then somebody else came later and said they had it, and we discussed the questions of better title among others, and then the property and fraud unit of the police, you make a report and then they check your documents and see how it goes. So how do I put encroachers at bay?
Let the encroacher know that somebody else owns the property. Put your land in such a state that if the encroacher comes and you have to report or go to court, there will be something to show. So we come back to registration.
Right.
Register your land. Have your documents registered. Do something on the land, at least to show that somebody owns the land. Basically, that's how you deal with the encroachers.
Yes.
And visit your land frequently.
As often as possible.
Yes, especially when you haven't developed it.
All right. Okay.
Then from the encroachers, you know, when the encroachers graduate, they get more dangerous.
They graduate.
They graduate because then it gets more serious.
Okay.
If the person is encroaching and you are not visiting the land, so for so many years you haven't been onto your land, this person goes there as an encroacher, or probably believing honestly that he's been sold that piece of land.
Okay.
He stays on the land for more than 12 years without any resistance from you. He becomes a formal encroacher. Let me put it that way, because then when you try to get him off, he can plead what we discussed last week, adverse possession, that he's been in possession of the land for over 12 years without any resistance.
Okay.
So he also had the honest belief that he's the owner of the land.
So as you taught us last week, and you are repeating today, you must take the necessary steps to ensure that even when an encroacher comes on the property and then they stay on for so long, and like she said, they graduate to become adverse possessors, they would get to a situation where when you want to take your land back, the court will support you, or the whole system will support you to get your land back. And those processes include, from the scratch, the way she has taught us to do. Go to the land first, get a surveyor to pick it for you, do your search, do a registration. If you have to get consents, get the consents, and so on and so forth. And do something physically on the land. And the last week she said you can do footings, or you can farm on it, or do things that will put people on notice. She used that word a lot last week. Okay, so
then something. The next is
so
for those who take the land who mortgage the land for repayment of loans.
All right.
You could lose your land as well if you fail to pay the loan.
All right.
That's for the mortgages and the charges. You have charged the land, you've given it to the financial institution as security that you will definitely pay your loan, and that if you fail to pay the loan, then they can kick in the necessary processes and
take
sell
it over.
your land to pay
the loan.
your loan.
Right.
So yes, if you had issues with your business and you had a loan, it's better to start talking to your financial institution, think about restructuring or some other way. Don't let them move, because now they may not go through the whole process of a rate. If they registered it with the collateral registry, it's a simpler process to take over your land. So for the mortgages, yes, it's another threat to your land.
Okay, so we will be talking about, and you have hinted at a few things. There's someone who is joining us on Zoom now and has a question or some contribution. We want to get to that person right now. But you had hinted at, when you were talking about adverse possession, you were saying maybe the person is actually on it, or even as an encroacher is on it with a genuine belief that it has been given to them when the thing may have been given to you already. That will be double allocation or sale. And then we'll talk about the questions of the expiry of the term, which you have mentioned earlier, the re-entry for breach of covenant, you have mentioned somehow, non-development and foreclosure of mortgages. Hello.
Hello, Samson.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for joining on Covered on the Law.
Yes, thank you so much. I thought this thing was a host, but I didn't know it was a real thing. I live in Denver,
what's the name
in the
again?
United States.
What's the name again?
My name is Buedi.
Okay, Buedi. Let's go. Let's hear
Yes. Yes, I live in Denver in the United States. I come from a little town in Etiwa West called Esunafo.
Mm-hmm.
That is where we come from. Mm-hmm. We own land there. Now, the chief of that place has given the land to a concession for people to mine gold there. So what happens to me? Am I entitled to a compensation? Do I have a say in determining what kind of compensation I'm paid for the land I've been given? It's an ancestral land. That is where we come from. We have nowhere to go. Yeah. Can a chief just take over the land and mine there without any compensation?
All right. Okay, so Bodi, I don't know. Yes, I think you should stay on those so that we'll finish with you. Questions of eminent domain and properly so-called the questions of mining. The Constitution is very clear that the mineral resources of the land of this country are vested in the President of the Republic as a trustee for and on our behalf. So what sort of mining is going on there, and is a chief able to do all of these things? And what do the subjects, so to speak, of the place stand to benefit, and what say do they have? That is his question.
He says that he owns a parcel of land. See, sometimes they will say they own land, but it's difficult to tell the kind of ownership they have in the land.
Okay.
Is it that the land belongs to their family and that the chief doesn't have control over the land? That's another thing. Then the chief may not be able to give it out.
Okay.
But sometimes it is two land, but they've permitted some families to farm on portions of the land. So if we have a bit of clarification on that, it would be helpful.
Okay. So Bwedi, I saw you nodding when she asked whether it belongs to your family. What do you want to, what clarification do you have?
Yes, it belongs to my family. That is where we come from. We are the contingent of that land. And it's an ancestral land. I mean, we can't tell when we, that is where we come from. My great grandfather is from the town. My father can be a chief of that town. It's not a stool land. Okay. It's not a stool land.
Interesting. So from what he has said, you have supplied the answer to a certain extent, but can you reiterate?
Bwedi, if the land is not stool land, the chief does not have control over it. And even the concession you are talking about, is that it's not the chief who gives the concession. The concession will come, license to mine will come from the state through the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources.
Right.
So kindly engage the chief. But if you are not clear, you can engage the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources and know the extent of the license that has been given.
Right.
And indicate your interest in the land.
And proper concessions, so to speak, in law must go through a whole process, including confirmation processes in Parliament before you can actually have a valid concession to work on. Bwedi, I would suggest that maybe we need to, get to you on the back of this and get more details as to exactly your ownership and that of the chief.
Yes, something I'll be so grateful. Right. I have all my life wanted to talk to you.
All right.
Please. I can give my number to your producer and then we can talk.
Yeah, Bwedi, do so.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, thank you. We have Mugis. Hello, Mugis.
I'm with you.
Yes, go ahead. Let's hear you, Mugis.
Good afternoon, something. Some aspect of this country, to some extent, somebody will go and buy a land from.
Okay, Mugis, I'm sorry, but there's one Opoku who is joining, and there's a baby crying, so the feedback is not the best. Can we try Mugis again? Yes, Mugis. Hello, Mugis, you can go on with your question now.
Some part of our country, in a way, you will go and then buy a land from a family.
Mm-hmm.
And then it happened that the family doesn't have a lease for the land. And all what they can do is to go with you to a place where maybe somebody is given a license by the court to be able to issue a receipt for you. You
Okay.
go with the family with your witness, and then their witness, and then they will give that receipt to you. Now, is that what do you call it, evident enough for you to say I bought the land and that land belongs to me? I want to know.
Okay. Thank you, Mugis. Yes, Mrs. Frimpong.
Mugis, until you have a document evidencing the land transaction, the transaction is not complete. So the receipt will not state all the details that you need in a lease. Yes, in some areas, the families don't own the land. They may be permitted to deal with it, but when they have given you a grant, they may still have to lead you to a chief or a higher authority to give you a lease. So follow through the process and ensure that you have the lease document. That's the ultimate thing that you should have. The receipt is not enough.
Right. And if you joined us on Sunday or were able to watch the repeat broadcast on Monday, you would realize that last week she stressed on the transaction itself, that receipting for the money paid is not how we do land transaction. That is good. You need that. But beyond that, you need to evidence the transaction with what she referred to as an indenture. Normally, the one giving it to you will do that for you. Together you could see a lawyer and they will do what is known as an indenture. And the indenture will say, on this so-and-so date in 2020, Mr. So-and-so or this so-and-so family, which has a title in this land or which owns this land, which they got from this other family or they got from so-and-so and so, today have decided to give this portion of it to you for this amount of money and for this number of years. So you need that one. It is very, very important, which he said in some places you could actually go and register that because you don't have a registration process in that area.
Title registration.
Title registration in that area. Yeah. Yes. So who do we have again? Yes, Mugis, do you want to say something again?
Yeah, what I was trying to say again is that what about even if commissioner of an oath? Do you want to say something again? Yeah, if a commissioner of an oath signed that those documents. What about even
Okay, thank you, Mugis. I get what you are trying to say. The commissioners for oath, they don't sign. They can help you to do the documents. Yeah, explain to Mugis.
Mugis, the commissioner of oath would probably just type something to show that there has been some dealings. That's all they would do. It is not enough. As Samson was trying to explain, this document will state your names, it will state your addresses, it will state where the one selling the land to you got it from, it will state the number of years they are giving to you, it will state the rent that you are supposed to pay, it will state whether they will renew. It states a lot of things. That's not what the commissioner for oath will do. So you need the lease documents.
All right. Thank you, Mugis. I suppose you have been fully, assisted in this regard. Who do we have again? Otherwise, we will continue. And this is COVID and the law. This is your legal light and health law in these trying times. And this afternoon, we have Mrs. Veronica Frimpong once again assisting us to deal with security of your land. So after you spoke about the encroachers who may come on the land and they may graduate onto adverse possessors, you we're going to talk about, is it double allocation or sale of by the grantor? Yeah. So
double allocation, the chief gave or the family sold a piece of land to you. Sometimes genuinely they make mistakes. The surveyor who prepared the plan may make a mistake and prepare plan over the same portion of land for another person. Or the chief may mistakenly think that the land is not sold and may sell it to another person. So please, that's why it's very important that you have your documents registered. So that if they even make the mistake and that person conducts a search, your name comes up and then the mistake is immediately seen. But sometimes too, it's not out of mistake, we know, mischief, they will sell to another person, especially when they know that you haven't done anything on the land, you haven't registered the land. Sometimes they end up reselling the same land. So that's for the double allocation. So
sometimes that is what they say in the whole, they know what they are doing, and they will sell one same piece of land to various people. And there are some people who are actually in that business, you know. They sell to you, then the next day they sell to the next person. So one goes to complain, they say, oh, take your time, we'll find you another one. We have another one somewhere here. We'll find you another one. All that is not the best. So go through the process, get the land picked by a surveyor, do your search, register your land, and do something on it to secure it. Emmanuel, what do you have? Let's hear you, Emmanuel.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Good afternoon, Emmanuel.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. Really, I'm speaking from Nigeria here. I'm very much happy with what you are doing.
Okay.
I have just one question. With reference to this lecture going on, does it mean that this has not been made Nigerians that are there to really understand their do's and don'ts that brought about the misunderstanding? Because last month, I had a very serious problem that was going on within the country over there. So with this, how far have you gone to really make peace reign over there?
All right. Emmanuel, thank you. Thank you very much. But unfortunately, this is covered in the law, where we simply are assisting people who have legal issues and need solutions, but because of COVID, may not even be able to afford the services of a lawyer or something, and we are assisting them with general principles of the law and solutions, and seeking to empower people to know how to engage and deal with certain situations. So you are talking about the coming elections and peace. Yes, we understand that there are some ECOWAS traders who are engaging, alleged to be engaged in the retail business, which the laws of Ghana don't allow. But we understand that our president and the president of Nigeria have been in talks. And I think even this week, a minister came from Nigeria to the Jubilee House, and we know that they are doing everything to settle the case amicably. Nigerians in Ghana are our brothers and our sisters. So I don't think that will affect the peace going forward in the elections. Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for connecting with us from Nigeria. Now, so we were talking about the double sale and so on. Now, you had brought in the question of people who give their lands or, yes, as a guarantee or as security for a loan, and things may happen later on. So questions of foreclosure or of mortgage and other things, what can you say about those other aspects so that we are properly alerted?
When you give your land as security for repayment of a loan that you have contracted from a financial institution, you are simply saying that you will pay the money. But in case you don't pay the money, the land is the security. In other words, they can get an order to sell your land and then use the proceeds to defray your debt or to pay your outstanding liability to the financial institution. It could be you yourself, it could be your company, or it could be a friend. Once you have agreed and used your property as security, then you should ensure that the loan is paid. So if you did it and you are having difficulties, or you had difficulties because of COVID, your business suffered and you were not able to pay, please quickly get to the financial institution and then engage them. Because the process could be simpler than just issuing a rate and going through a full trial to resolve it. Yes.
Okay. Muhammad Isaka, welcome to Covered and the Law.
Thank you very much, Samson. I have a simple question. After the 99 years of the lease period,
right?
What do I do if the person leasing the land to me comes to me and has increased it to maybe an amount that I cannot pay? Meanwhile, I've already put up some structures on the land. What do I do? Okay. Since I cannot move the structures from the land and give the land back to the owner.
Right. You certainly have enjoyed the land for 99 years. Okay, yes.
Yeah. You may not have to wait till the 99 years have elapsed. You have to be proactive and engage the one who sold the land to you. Obviously, if after 99 years, I don't think you may be alive. So it's probably some property that you inherited. So we spoke about the vesting assent.
Right.
When you do the vesting assent and it's done properly, sometimes they just say they are vesting the land which belongs to the deceased person to you. They don't state the interest or the number of years the person has. But if it's done properly, it states, or it's easier to ascertain the number of years that are left. So if you notice that you have less years, then you start engaging the lessor for renewal of the lease. Otherwise, you had 99 years to enjoy the land, unless there is a clause that they would automatically renew the lease. Otherwise, after enjoying your 99 years.
So sometimes there's a clause that says there will be an automatic renewal.
Yes, sometimes there's a clause that says it will be automatically renewed on the same or similar terms.
Okay.
Then it means that whatever rent you are paying, if there was a rent review clause in it, a clause that says that the rent will be reviewed by maybe 10% every 3 years, then you go by that same principle and then it will be renewed. But even with that, the right is automatic, but you will still need the person to sign it off.
Right. Okay. Yes, Mohammed.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think my question has been well answered.
Thank you. Thank you too. This is Covered in the Law. This is your legal light and health law in these trying times. And our guest is Mrs. Veronica Frimpong, former legal officer, Lands Commission, and head of legal, SIC, Life Savings and Loans. Mr. Opoku-Amponsah, Dr. Opoku-Amponsah joins us. Hello, Doc.
I don't know my listening you today.
Hello, Doc. Dr. Opoku-Amponsah. All right. So kindly unmute yourself, like I said, and listen to us through the Zoom that you have activated. Don't listen to us on the TV when you want to interact directly with us. If you do so, it will not help because there will be a delay in the transmission of your message. So you had also hinted on a number of things, but I think we need to re-emphasize so we don't forget them. If I take the land and I don't develop it, possibilities of the owners coming for it and so on, how does that happen?
Something that's very common in certain areas. So the chief will tell you that I gave you the land for you to develop within 3 years. You hadn't developed in 3 years, so I've taken over my land. They have the right, but there's a process to go through. Okay. And that's where we have the problem. You usually have those clauses in our leases, as I said. Most people don't read it. Yeah. Or probably they read and they don't understand. Right. You usually see that you commence development within a certain period. Usually they will say 1 year, and that you complete within a certain period. Right. Once you see that the person is simply telling you that when I sell this land to you, start developing it within 3 years. If you don't start developing it, he has a right to take it, but he has to go through a certain process. He should first notify you to actually develop the land or to do what you have promised to do. Then when you fail to do that, he will continue with the process and re-enter the land. He will take the land back from you. So those of you who have bought, those who buy land and leave the land there for so many years, if there is a development clause, your lessor may trigger the process
of re-entry and re-enter the land. And remember, she speaks about covenants in the land documentation that you get. Now, there you will find there are some we call express, and there are some that are not express. But more importantly, once it is put in there expressly that you are required to do one or two or this or that within certain timelines and periods in a certain way, you have to abide by it. If you don't, then you have breached the covenant. Because you have breached it, there is a remedy, and the remedy is still there in your document. You may not have read it, that when you breach this one, this thing will happen. And when it happens to you, then some people have a difficulty. But like she said, there must be a process. You must have a notice to be told that you took it and the agreement was that you develop it within this period. Then they'll give you a little time. Sometimes it's about how you will engage with the person you are dealing with. So often it is important to engage. Ruben. Hello, Ruben.
Yeah, please, I would like to know, after buying the land for 99 years and you've invested on it like a property, and the year is due, will you have to sell the property by force and then give it back to the owners, or?
Okay, Ruben, we hear you. A number of you are interested in this, but you should have been listening throughout anyway. So can you go over that for them?
Ruben, after 99 years, the land is no longer yours, so you can't sell it. So we kept saying that before the 99 years end, please engage your lessor. But assuming you are unable to and it has expired, please still engage the lessor and then have a renewal. They will renew the lease for you for another period. Otherwise, the old document you are holding becomes invalid. You have to go for another document.
Right. And emphasize again, last week you told us when you have a lease, you can also give some of it to somebody through an assignment. And even that, you can't give without, the consent of the person who had given it to you. So he should know that if he tries to even give out, he has to go through a certain process. Can you emphasize that?
Yes, that's another covenant that we usually have in most of the leases around. There's a covenant that you won't transfer without the consent of your lessor or the person who sold it to you. So anytime you are transferring the property, you have to obtain the written consent of the one who sold it to you. That's the lessor. So in this case, Ruben, assuming the 99 years had not even expired and you intended to sell, if you have such a clause in your lease, then you would need to take the consent of your lessor.
Right. Unfortunately, we are unable to take any more of you. I can see a number of you on, but we can't take you. So briefly, what can you say about foreclosure of mortgages for some emphasis?
Some institutions will register the mortgage at the Lands Commission. Some will do collateral registry.
Right.
Now, when you do collateral registry, the procedure for foreclosing is very simple. In fact, if they can peacefully take over the property, they are allowed to.
Okay.
They may not have to go to court if they can peacefully take over the property.
We are talking about the case where you give the property as security and you take a loan.
And you take a loan and you default and they come and they can.
There's a lot of it in town.
Peacefully take over. There's no issue. They will just take over and then go and sell.
Right.
If it can be done peacefully, they will simply file an application in court that this person took a loan. We want warrant to seize the property and then sell it. And it's as simple as that. Your property is gone.
Okay. What will be your final comment in some seconds?
Land transaction, land acquisition, land security is as simple as knowing that you ought to be vigilant. And it's as complex as being beyond your simple understanding.
All right. Thank you once again, Mrs. Veronica Frimpong, Head of Legal, SIC Life and Savings, Life Savings and Loans, for the very expensive legal education you have given to us for free. We thank our viewers who joined us through Zoom, Bodi, and the rest of you. Thank you all so very much. You can listen again or watch tomorrow morning around 9-10 o'clock. Yes, you can catch this again. We'll come your way again next week with another subject matter. This is Covered and the Law. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini. Have a good afternoon.